The fire in my chambers whispers tonight, a soft crackle and hiss that echoes the quiet hush of the palace. Cedar smoke, heavy and sweet, curls towards the high carved ceiling, mingling with the scent of old parchment and the faint lingering aroma of frankincense from my evening prayers. It's a comforting smell, a familiar companion in these late hours when the city outside finally settles into its slumber. Sometimes I find myself sitting here, just like this, long after the last lamp has been extinguished in the courtyards, long after my advisors have retired to their own beds, and the guards walk their silent rounds. It's a strange thing, this quiet. A king, they say, never truly sleeps, for the weight of his kingdom rests upon his shoulders, and they are not wrong. My name, as you may know, is Solomon, son of David, a name that means peace. A lofty aspiration, perhaps, for a man born into so much turmoil and tasked with governing a nation still finding its footing in a world of empires. My father, King David, was a lion, a warrior, a poet, a man after God's own heart, as the scriptures say. A giant in every sense of the word. And then there was me. When I inherited the throne, I was young. Very young, really, hardly more than a boy in my own estimation, though the crown they placed upon my head felt ancient and impossibly heavy. It pressed down, not just on my brow, but on my very soul. I remember looking out at the vast throngs of people gathered for my anointing, their faces a sea of expectation and hope. And I thought, me? Is it truly me they expect to lead them? My father had built so much. He had fought the wars, united the tribes, established Jerusalem as the capital. He left me a kingdom, yes, but also an immense legacy, a legacy that felt like a mountain I was expected to climb, without even knowing where the path began. He had said to me just before he passed, "Be strong, therefore, and show yourself a man, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways, and keeping his statutes, his commandments, his rules, and his testimonies." Grand words, terrifying words. I tried, of course. I tried to walk in his ways. I offered sacrifices, I prayed, I listened to the counsel of the elders my father had appointed. But always there was this gnawing doubt, this quiet fear that I was not enough, that I lacked the wisdom, the discernment, the sheer presence that a king needed. I was a child, truly, and the weight of Israel was a burden I feared I would crush beneath. One day, I decided I needed to seek the Lord in a special way, to make a grand offering, a dedication of my heart, and frankly, my overwhelming inadequacy before the Almighty. The tabernacle, the tent of meeting that Moses had built, where the Ark of the Covenant had once rested, was still at Gibeon, a high place not far from Jerusalem. It felt right, a pilgrimage to the very place where God had met his people for generations. The journey itself was quite something, not a short stroll, mind you, and to travel with the full retinue of a king, all the guards and servants, the priests and the animals for sacrifice, it was an undertaking. The dust of the road, I remember, settled thick on everything, turning the rich colors of our garments to a uniform shade of ochre. The sun beat down, a relentless hammer on the back of the neck, and the air was alive with the buzzing of insects and the lowing of the cattle we led. But there was a certain peace in the rhythm of the journey, too, the steady thud of feet on ancient paths, the creak of the carts, the soft murmur of conversations. It was a time for reflection, for quiet prayer as the landscape unrolled before us, familiar yet always new. I watched the shepherds with their flocks, the farmers tilling their fields, and I thought, these are my people. How can I possibly guide them? We arrived at Gibeon as the sun was beginning its slow descent, painting the western sky in hues of fiery orange and deep violet. The air up there on the high place was cooler, thinner, and carried the faint scent of juniper and pine. The tabernacle, standing tall against the evening sky, seemed to glow with a quiet majesty, a testament to generations of faith. That night, under a sky so vast and studded with stars it felt as if one could reach out and pluck them like grapes, I offered my sacrifices, 1,000 burnt offerings. 1,000! Can you imagine the sheer scale of it? The smoke rose in a column, thick and fragrant, carrying with it not just the scent of the burning animals, but the earnest prayers of my heart. It was an act of profound humility, a desperate plea for divine guidance.
I slept there that night, perhaps in one of the temporary shelters set up for the priests and our party. The air was cool against my skin, and the sounds of the camp were hushed, a symphony of gentle breathing, the rustle of leaves, and the distant cry of a night bird. I remember feeling utterly exhausted, but also a strange sense of lightness, as if the burden I carried had momentarily been lifted, or at least acknowledged by a power far greater than myself. And then I dreamt. It wasn't like any dream I had ever had before or since. It was not a jumbled tapestry of daily events, nor a frightful nightmare that left me gasping. No, this was real, more real than the ground beneath me or the stars above. The air around me in the dream was luminous, shimmering with a light that was both gentle and incredibly powerful. And in that light, a voice that filled not just the space around me, but every fiber of my being. It was the Lord Himself. He spoke, and His words resonated deep within me. Ask what I shall give you. Think of that for a moment. The Creator of the heavens and the earth, the God of my father David, standing before me in a dream, offering me anything I could ask for. My mind, even in that dream state, began to race. A kingdom of unimaginable wealth, unconquerable armies, a lifespan that stretched beyond all human reckoning, the instant vanquishing of every enemy that might ever dare to raise a hand against Israel. The possibilities were dizzying, intoxicating. But then, another thought, a quieter, more insistent whisper, began to rise above the clamor of desire. It was the same doubt that had plagued me since my father's death, the same fear that I was not equipped. I thought of my father, David, and all he had accomplished. He had been a man of war, yes, but also a shepherd, a musician, a king who governed with both strength and compassion. He had been so wise, and I was but a little child. I did not know how to go out or come in. I began to speak, and my voice, though it felt small and insignificant in that radiant presence, was steady. I reminded the Lord of His great kindness to my father David, and how He had granted him a son to sit on His throne, even me. And then I spoke of my own predicament. O Lord my God, You have made Your servant king in place of David my father. Though I am but a little child, I did not know how to go out or come in. And Your servant is in the midst of Your people whom You have chosen, a great people, too many to be numbered or counted. My heart felt utterly exposed, laid bare before Him. I wasn't just saying words, I was speaking the truth of my soul. I was overwhelmed. I was afraid of failing not just myself, but my people, and the legacy of God's covenant with my father. And then, the request came. It was not for riches, not for power, not for vengeance. It was for something far more precious, far more enduring. Give Your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern Your people, that I may discern between good and evil, for who is able to govern this Your great people? Silence, a profound, sacred silence that stretched for what felt like an eternity. I waited, my dream heart beating a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Had I asked for too little? Had I offended Him by not requesting something grander, something that would demonstrate a king's ambition? Or had I, perhaps, stumbled upon the very thing He wished for me to ask? Then, the voice returned, and this time, there was a profound sense of pleasure, of approval in His tone. Because you have asked this, and have not asked for yourself long life or riches, or the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, behold,
I now do according to your word." A shiver, not of fear but of pure wonder, ran through me. He was pleased. He was truly pleased. And then came the promise, a cascade of blessings far beyond what I could have imagined. "Behold, I give you a wise and discerning mind, so that none like you has been before you, and none like you shall arise after you. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that no king shall be among you like you all your days. And if you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days." The dream began to fade then, the luminous presence receding, the voice becoming a gentle echo in the vastness of my mind. I remember feeling a sense of profound peace, a quiet certainty settling over me like a warm blanket. The burden was still there, yes, but now it felt manageable. I had been given the tools. The path, though still winding, now had a light upon it.
I woke with a gasp, the dawn light just beginning to filter through the cracks in the shelter. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the fresh scent of dew and wood smoke. For a moment I lay there, blinking, trying to reconcile the vivid reality of the dream with the tangible world around me. Had it truly happened? Or was it merely the product of an exhausted mind after 1,000 sacrifices? But the feeling persisted, the profound peace, the sense of a new clarity, a sharp edge to my thoughts that had not been there before. It was as if a veil had been lifted or a fog dispersed. I knew deep in my bones that it was real. God had spoken, and he had granted my request. I rose, feeling a renewed strength in my limbs, a quiet purpose in my heart. The journey back to Jerusalem felt different. The dust was still there, the sun still beat down, but now I saw the faces of my people with new eyes. I saw their hopes, their struggles, their simple dignity, and I felt a surge of confidence, not in myself, but in the wisdom that had been bestowed upon me. Back in Jerusalem, the first thing I did was to stand before the Ark of the Covenant, which was now in the city, within the tent my father had prepared for it. I offered more burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord, and made a feast for all my servants. It was a celebration, not just of my return, but of the divine encounter that had transformed me. And then the wisdom was put to the test, and what a test it was. It began, as these things often do, with a knock at the palace gates, and then an urgent request to see the king. 2 women, they said, 2 prostitutes who lived in the same house, and they had a dispute, a terrible one, involving life and death and a baby. I remember sighing inwardly. Already, I thought, has the ink barely dried on my new wisdom, and here we are with a domestic squabble of such particular delicacy? One might have expected a border dispute or a challenge from a neighboring kingdom. But no, the first true test of my divine gift was to be a squabble between 2 women over an infant. Such is the nature of kingship, I suppose, the grand and the mundane, all mixed together. They were brought before me, these 2 women, and I must say they were a sight, disheveled, distraught, and utterly consumed by their grief and fury. They began to tell their story, both at once, their voices shrill and overlapping like 2 birds fighting over a single crumb. My scribes, usually so precise in their note-taking, looked utterly bewildered. I raised a hand, and the room fell silent, save for the ragged breathing of the women. I bid them speak one at a time. The first woman, wild-eyed and trembling, began. She explained that they lived together in one house, and that she had given birth to a son. 3 days later, the other woman also gave birth. They were alone in the house, just the 2 of them and their babies. Then, she continued, one night the other woman's baby died. She had overlaid it in her sleep. Overlaid it! A terrible tragedy, to be sure. But then the first woman's voice grew even more frantic. In the middle of the night, while she slept, the other woman had risen, taken her living child, and put her dead child in its place.
She put her dead child in my bosom, and my living child she took for herself, she cried, her voice cracking with indignation and sorrow. When I rose in the morning to nurse my child, behold, it was dead. But when I looked at it closely in the morning, behold, it was not the child that I had borne. A terrible story indeed, but before I could even fully process it, the second woman, who had been simmering with barely contained fury, erupted. "No, that is not true. The living child is mine, and the dead child is yours." And so it went. Back and forth they argued, accusing each other, weeping, tearing at their hair. "The living child is mine. No, the living child is yours. The dead child is yours. No, the dead child is mine." The noise was deafening, and the air crackled with their raw emotion. My advisors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was not a matter of law, but of raw, untamed human passion. How does one judge such a thing? There were no witnesses, no proof, only the word of one against the word of the other. I sat for a moment, listening to the echoes of their arguments, watching their desperate faces. I felt the wisdom stir within me, a quiet, knowing certainty. It was not a grand pronouncement, not a flash of lightning, but a calm, clear path through the tangled mess. "Bring me a sword," I commanded, my voice cutting through the remaining tension in the room. My advisors exchanged bewildered glances. A sword? For a baby? Even the women for a moment fell silent, their eyes wide with confusion. A guard, looking equally perplexed, hurried to fetch one. The polished blade, when it arrived, gleamed coldly in the torchlight.
"Now," I said, my voice steady, my gaze fixed on the two women. "Divide the living child in two, and give half to the one and half to the other." A collective gasp swept through the court. Horror, disbelief, shock, all mingled on the faces around me. Was the new king mad? Had the journey to Gibeon addled his mind? My own heart, I confess, gave a little tremor, a tiny flicker of human doubt at the audacity of the pronouncement. But the wisdom held firm. I knew what I was doing. And then, a different sound. A wail, heart-wrenching and primal, from the first woman. She fell to her knees, her hands clasped, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, my lord, give her the living child, and by no means put it to death. Just let the child live." Her plea was desperate, raw, utterly genuine. The second woman, however, responded differently. A cold, hard look settled on her face. "It shall be neither mine nor yours. Divide it," she spat, her voice laced with venom. "Let it be cut." The contrast was stark, like night and day. One woman, willing to sacrifice her claim, her very desire to possess the child, if it meant saving its life. The other, so consumed by envy and bitterness that she would rather see the child destroyed than let her rival have it. The wisdom, I realized, was not just in finding the truth, but in revealing the true nature of the hearts involved. Give the first woman the living child, and by no means put it to death, I declared, my voice firm. She is its mother. The relief in the room was palpable, a collective exhalation. The first woman sobbed, clutching the baby to her, her face buried in its soft hair. The second woman stood frozen, her eyes wide with a chilling blend of defeat and fury. And just like that, the matter was settled. The judgment was done. It was simple, yet profound. It cut through the lies and revealed the truth with startling clarity. The news of that judgment spread like wildfire throughout Israel. Every corner of the land heard of it, and the reaction was something I had never anticipated. They stood in awe of the king, the scriptures later recorded.
for they perceived that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. It was a humbling moment to realize that the gift I had received, this quiet inner knowing, had manifested in such a public and powerful way. From that day forward, the weight of the crown felt different. It was still heavy, yes, but now it was a weight I felt equipped to bear. The wisdom that God had given me was not a magical solution to every problem, but rather a compass, a guiding light that allowed me to navigate the complex currents of human nature and the intricacies of governance. It was in a way the beginning of everything, the foundation upon which the rest of my reign would be built. The riches and honor that God had promised, they came in time. The palace I eventually built, the temple that became the glory of Israel, the visits from queens from distant lands, marveling at the splendor and the order of my kingdom, all of it flowed from that single, humble request at Gibeon. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I had asked for something else, a long life perhaps, or untold wealth. Would I have received it? Perhaps. But would I have been able to truly use it? Would it have brought true peace, true prosperity, true justice to my people? I doubt it. For what good is gold without the wisdom to manage it, or power without the understanding to wield it justly? As it is said, how much better to get wisdom than gold, to choose understanding rather than silver? The true treasure, I learned, was not in what I had, but in what I knew, and how I applied that knowledge for the good of those entrusted to my care. It was a wisdom that allowed me to see beyond the surface, to discern the true heart of a matter, to bring order where there was chaos, and peace where there was strife. And so here I sit tonight, the fire embers glowing softly, the palace quiet, save for the gentle rustle of leaves outside. The years have passed, and with them many lessons learned, many challenges faced. But the core of it, the very foundation of my understanding, traces back to that miraculous dream at Gibeon and the simple, desperate plea of a young king who knew he was not enough and wisely sought the one thing that could make him so. May your own heart find such peace tonight, my friend. May the quiet whispers of the night bring you rest, and may any burdens that weigh upon your spirit be gently lifted. May you know the profound comfort of God's presence, even in your deepest sleep, and may wisdom guide your waking hours, a gentle light illuminating your path, bringing clarity to confusion and calm to your soul. Sleep now, deeply and peacefully, under the watchful eye of the one who knows all your needs and desires only your good. Good night.